Hey, what is up, everyone? Just went through a walkthrough at a property that we are green lighting to be selling next week, so I'm really excited for that. The walkthrough went as well as it could have been. Sometimes those can be a little stressful because it is a make or break kind of walkthrough, but this one I was very optimistic about. The closing's been smooth so far, and they're not always smooth, so that's a blessing for sure. Just showing off my new little home office setup. I got my Magic the Gathering mouse pad, which is not really gonna stay as a mouse pad, but I don't have a mouse pad right now, so my Magic the Gathering mat will suffice. I bought a new monitor, which is also a smart TV, which is great, so I can just chill if I need to and just put the desk down. Watch this. Watch how fun this is. Yeah, I know. I know. And now I can just watch TV as the TV would and put my laptop away. So that's what I've been doing. I'm really excited for that. I wanted to just come on here to maybe just start this sort of format of videos. I'm going to probably be doing some of these just from the comfort of my own home, where we talk about anything and everything. The biggest questions that I get all the time, some introductory videos. So I just wanted to come online here and answer some questions that people have consistently been asking me, things that I've heard multiple times, and I think that just having a video to point people to would be very helpful. And this video will be just about, hey, how do I know if I can buy a house or not? And this question really is something that you should, first and foremost, talk to a licensed loan officer. It's called an LO. A loan officer is licensed in the finance side of it, just the same way as I'm licensed in the real estate side. And when you're transacting real estate, you work with this kind of team, and we have other people as part of this team, and that's during the closing process, assuming you're using a bank. If you have 100% of the cash to purchase a home, then you can just buy it in cash. If the house is 100 grand, you're going to add some closing costs onto that, and you can go that route. Most people don't have 100 grand just sitting around liquid. So what you're going to actually want to do is bring 20%, and then you can purchase a home when the bank gives you the other 80%. Now, there are solutions for people that also don't have 20 grand sitting around to buy a $100,000 house. And when you start asking yourself, well, how do people buy houses that are more expensive than that? There's a lot of different ways to roll your money from one property to the other. But this video is specifically going to focus on how do I stop renting and start owning? Because rent, we know, just keeps increasing every year. You're not in charge of your house. They can sell it out from under you. They can not renew your lease. You're forced to move. And if you don't move, they're just going to keep raising your rent. If you're lucky enough to get a place that you don't have to do any of the maintenance and you're still not paying exorbitant amounts of rent, then you're lucky and you've found a place. And that's a good thing. And some landlords aren't going to raise your rent, but eventually they can. And so what my suggestion would be is to talk about and realize that there's three pillars that I call of home buying. The three pillars of home buying are cash, which we're going to dive into as far as how much and what you should expect as far as closings and closing costs and down payments and down payment assistance and all these categories. The second thing you need is to have decent credit. Depending on the loan type, there's a loan type called FHA. There's a loan type called conventional. If you're a veteran, you can use a VA loan. There are lots of opportunities to dive into these specific types. But the main important difference is that if your credit is low, you can't get any kind of loan. So there are multiple different loan types if you are looking at using a bank and using a loan. However, some of these loan types aren't going to be available to you no matter what if your credit isn't at a minimum amount. This is all case by case. They're going to look at how much money you have in the bank, just in your checkings account, ready to be spent. They're going to look at how much you make per month. But generally speaking, you can get an FHA loan, which is designed to help people get into housing where they might not have been able to. With this FHA loan type, you have the ability to have less income, less closing cost money that you're actually using towards down payment, and you can have less credit. And that's why it's backed by the federal government. A lot of people think it's a first-time home buyer's loan, but really it's designed to create first-time home buyers, yes, but the FHA stands for Federal Housing Administration. It is backed by the federal government, where other commercial and conventional loans technically aren't. And because it's backed by the federal government, you're going to actually have these inspections and appraisals technically during the closing process, which are a little more strict. So when you're going to buy a house, if you can get a conventional loan, you're going to want to use that conventional loan, because to a seller, there's much less of a hurdle to overcome during that closing process. So it just makes sense for you to use the best type of loan you can. But FHA loans are really valuable. And to see if you qualify, all you have to do is reach out to a loan officer. Generally speaking, and don't hold me to it because I'm not a loan officer, but you need a credit score. You need a certain amount of money down. And even if you get 0% down loans, such as VA loans are, then you're still going to have a house and no money in the bank. So you really don't want to put yourself in that position where you just don't have any ability to fix your own house, because now you're not relying on a landlord to fix a place. It's going to be on you. And the third thing that you're going to need is some sort of proof of income. So as long as you have like a monthly statement, or if you've been self-employed, you need to show probably about 2 years of self-employment. And that really helps to just assure the bank that you can actually pay this loan back. They're giving you hundreds of thousands of dollars maybe in the form of a mortgage. They don't want to repossess the house. They don't want to foreclose, which is when you stop paying your mortgage. But they want to make sure that you can actually afford the mortgage. Usually they're using some sort of 36% rule. So they're not going to loan out more than like 3 times of what you have. And as far as income. But again, this is all case by case. The best way to learn what works for you is to just actually use a loan officer and go through that pre-approval process. For FHA though, usually you need about a 580 credit score minimum. Usually for the proof of income, you need about 2.5 to 3 times the amount of what that monthly payment would be. And as far as cash, the really exciting thing about FHA, and I think the biggest deterrent from stopping people from purchasing a home, or from convincing people to just keep renting and just keep renewing that lease and keep paying somebody else's mortgage so they can go buy another house off your hard-earned money. A lot of people are taken back by the fact that we can get you into a house for $0. I've had a closing last month. We actually were able to get the client through a couple different loan programs, $76 back at closing. So she bought a house and made money on closing day. And that's an incredible thing that we were able to do. And it's possible for you as well. Basically, with an FHA loan, you have a minimum amount down for a down payment as 3.5%. So let's just assume you're buying a house for $100,000 to make the math simpler. We're looking at $3,500 down. We're looking at closing costs as well, right? So if there's any realtor fees you have to pay, transfer taxes, and just line item fees for title searches and all of the behind the scenes that are going to add up. Okay, so closing costs on a $100,000 house, we can assume it's going to be $3,000. So we're up to $6,500 in closing costs. That's the amount of money you bring on closing day. You've probably already put some money into escrow, which we can talk about escrow in a whole different video. But assuming you have $6,500, you can buy a house for $100,000. The bank lends out that other 96.5%, which is a loan to value ratio. We call it LTV, 96.5. You can bring more if you want, and your LTV goes down and your monthly payment goes down. And that's a great way to just save money because you're paying interest on that loan. So if you have the money up front to pay 10% down or 15% down, you should do so because over the next 30 years, you're paying interest on less money. So that's just a pretty typical way to just think about finance in general, right? The coolest part about an FHA loan is that we have the ability to use something called seller concessions. Before last August, it was actually titled Seller Assist, but now we've changed that terminology to Seller Concessions. And what a seller concession is the closing cost assistance from the seller. Now, with conventional loans, we can have a maximum seller concession amount of only 3%. But with FHA loans, because they're really trying to make it easier for you to start being a homeowner, we can do a maximum seller assist of 6%. So basically you have the ability to come into the closing with a 6% seller assist. Now, how do you use seller assist? How do you know when to use it? How do you negotiate that? That's why you use a good realtor. I'm going to give you all of my tips and tricks right here in this video. The biggest thing is, how long has the property been on the market? How many times have they decreased the price since it got listed? Why are they selling the property? All of these things come into play. Or you can always pay 106% of what the property is really worth. And that's the key to seller assist, is that let's assume you pay more than you should. And then you bring back your seller assist so it's at 100%, what you'd say is worth the property. Well, at that point, the sellers have gotten more money for their property and they're getting really the same amount, but that seller assist is getting put towards the closing costs and not getting put towards the loan or anything like that. But it is wrapped up into the overall amount of the loan. The loan amount has changed because we're paying extra for the property. The loan amount has changed minus the seller assist, which comes off at the closing. So it's a really nice way to utilize the bank, who's already bringing most of the cash into the deal, to really negotiate with the seller to say, hey, we're going to pay you more than you originally had wanted for the property. We could go above list, it's called. And if we go above list by 6% minus a 6% seller assist, it's basically the same game. And this is a really good way to make sure everybody wins, which in a real estate transaction, it's the only way to get things to actually close, when everybody wins. If one party feels they're not getting what they should, then they'll won't close. If both parties feel like they're kind of not getting what they should, that's usually how it goes. And that's what we call good business. So unfortunately, that's usually how it goes, is both parties feel like, I don't know. And guess what? That's how it should be. When you're using an FHA loan, you have to be aware that there are some more obstacles to overcome because the federal government doesn't want to get sued for the safety of the property. So we're talking about paint that is chipped on the exterior or interior of the home. We're talking about handrails that are not secured. We're talking about trip hazards, staircases outside, any sort of electrical issues that are maybe not capped, or old electric that is not capped, or maybe something that is just obviously a fire hazard. We're not going to get a federally backed loan with something that might have potential safety issues. And so those are difficult to overcome. With a conventional loan, there are conventional programs out there that I've seen where you can do as little as 5% down. So compared to our FHA, we're doing 5% down. FHA's 3.5%. We're doing 5% down. There are conventional programs I've seen where your credit can be as little as 620. And then for a conventional program, you're not having as much that comes back in that appraisal process, which is during our 30-day close. And it doesn't come back as strict, but there are still things where any bank is going to say, look, we appraised the house, it appraised for this amount, which another video we can make is what is an appraisal. Basically, we would like to keep those lists of repairs as short as we can, because those are opportunities for the deal to fall through. If the buyer says, hey, I can't afford to repair this thing, or I don't want to, and the seller also says, I don't want to do it, then we can't close the deal and the deal falls apart. And so that's why, again, you have a realtor to negotiate how to make sure that the deal's closed and make sure that everyone's feeling like, hey, we can work together on this. Because when you put sellers and buyers in the same room, oftentimes it's just like, no. So these are the 3 pillars of buying a home, as I call them to review. The 3 pillars are cash to close, which differs from the loan type that you're using, credit and a decent credit score, and a monthly proof of income, which is usually needing to be about at least 2.5 to 3 times what your mortgage amount actually and your mortgage monthly payment is going to be. Any other questions, feel free to reach out. This is just a general overview. All of these questions are better answered from a loan officer, but I do know a little bit about real estate law and real estate financing and all of these different categories. And that's kind of what a real estate agent does, is we are able to help in all the aspects of how you get a house sold. And that way we're really coordinating a team to make sure that it gets done and it gets done on time. Any other questions? Feel free to reach out. Peace.